All right, we are live here with a Schloss Rant from the Philadelphia suburbs. Listen, is there anything going on right now in the world of professional and collegiate football right now? Is there anything going on at all? Have any legendary coaches quit since I turned on the microphone, say 12 seconds ago? Because in the past, 36, 48 hours, we got Belichick, we got Saban, we got even Pete Carroll, who won a national championship in both college football and then a Super Bowl in the NFL, out. So this is just the most, honestly, remarkable time for football content. This is going to be a super pod, a mega pod. We got the wild card games to talk about. We got the Giants season to talk about. We'll give you an update on the under and overs from the beginning of the season that we gave out. There is a lot to go on. There are a lot of takes to give out. So let's just get right into it. The first thing that I want to say is that, listen, I don't want to hear any of you old curmudgeons who bought your house in 1983 for 13 bananas, 4 raspberries, and a Fuji apple complain about not knowing where the Chiefs-Dolphin game is located on the TV, about not knowing how to hook up the streaming from your phone to your TV or from your computer to your TV. I'm not here for any of that. You have been forewarned. This game is on Peacock. Go buy it. Go do the trial run. That might be what I'm going to do. But you've been forewarned. Call your children, call your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, whoever. Make sure that you know how to get on Peacock, how to find the game, which remote you should use. Should you do it off of your cell phone? Figure out if you have a Fire Stick, a Chromecast, a Roku, an Apple TV, whatever, or just a smart TV with the software already loaded on there. But figure out how to get onto that app and select the game, because I don't want to hear on the various sports talk shows that I listen to, people calling up all upset because they didn't know where the game was. They couldn't figure out how to get to the game. They couldn't get it from their phone or their tablet onto their big 55, 60, 70-inch TV, whatever the case. I don't want to hear it. You've been forewarned. And if all that is going to be complicated, then go out there, find a local establishment, not a chain, not Chili's, not Arby's, unless they want to sponsor this pod. I don't think Arby's has TVs, but you get the idea. Not TGI Fridays, not Applebee's. Go to a local establishment, order an appetizer, order a nice main course. Tip the waiters 25%, not 10%, because your 4th Diet Coke came back in 2 minutes instead of 1 minute and 37 seconds. Do the right thing. Go there and watch the game, because you've been forewarned. You know where it's at. You know it's not on your regular NBC unless you're in that Miami area or Kansas City area. And if you're up in like Martin County and there's an issue in it that's, north of Palm Beach County in Florida, north of Jupiter, I don't know if you're still considered to be in that Miami viewing market. Go figure it out. Look it up. Google it. If you're in that, Port St. Lucie area, even further up the coast there in South Florida, look it up. Figure out if the game is going to be on, but don't come crying and complaining to me because you didn't know where the game was, because you couldn't figure out how to get the game onto your TV, or because you didn't want to pay the $6 for Peacock. Listen, these Swifties are going to pay the $6 for Peacock just to get their eyes on Taylor Swift. So there's no reason why you can't do the same. And if you don't want to do it, again, just subscribe with a random email address. Just throwing that out there. Cancel it when it's all done. I don't think this is too much of a big deal for anyone to ask. Some of these Swifties, they spent a whole lot more than $6 to see her on tour this summer and this fall. So you can spend the $6 to watch your boyfriend Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs versus Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill for your Miami Dolphins. All right. We had to start there because people have been complaining nonstop, left and right. Get it together, get yourself organized, and don't come crying to me. Next thing, this is old news already. The Giants and the Eagles, I just got to touch on this game real quick before we get into all of the coaching shakeups that are out there. I'm happy the Giants won the game on Sunday. And the reason is because they only fell down one draft spot Okay. They beat the Eagles, and beating the Eagles anytime is good. They hadn't beaten them since 2021. We all know that the Eagles own my New York Football Giants. That's not news to anyone. They beat them 3 times last year, including that postseason blowout. All right, but the Eagles continue their tailspin. They lose by 17 points. Giants were up, 24-0 early in the game there. And I don't want to hear from the Eagle fan that your team wasn't trying because you weren't going to lock up the division. I just don't want to hear it. And again, this is okay for the Giants because the two teams in front of you, I should have mentioned this earlier, the two teams in front of you at 4 and 5, the Cardinals and the Chargers, they don't need quarterbacks. Herbert, obviously, with the Chargers. Maybe you argue that the Cardinals do with Murray, but he's got an $81 million dead cap hit, according to Spotrac. But I'm not celebrating going 6-11. That's not a good record. That's a losing record. That's 5 games under 500. So I want to win as many games as possible. I don't want to finish, though, at 5-12. That wouldn't be great. The Eagles are my number one sports rival. And listen, I'm not even going to celebrate the fact that they went 3-3 in the division, which is a step up because the last time that they probably had a non-losing record in the division was 2016 or maybe 2020, in that weird year where they almost won the division at 6-10, and people were throwing a parade for Joe Judge. Everyone was but me. But anytime you can beat the Eagles is definitely good. But the Eagles, they had something to play for. And I went back and checked the box score of both the Giant-Eagle game and the Commander-Cowboy game. So people were saying, oh, the Eagles aren't going to win the division anyway. They need the Cowboys to lose to the Commanders. The Giants, from all accounts, they had the scores up in MetLife Stadium. The Commanders were down 14-10 with 4 minutes and 12 seconds left in the second quarter. And at a similar portion in the game, so similar time, with 5:08 left in the second quarter, the Giants were up 17-0. The Giants were already beating them down when the Cowboy Commander game was still up for who was going to win the game. You know, it was a 4-point game. That's a close game. 1 touchdown. Maybe the Cowboys fumble. Maybe, Washington goes the other way. So I don't want to hear from Eagle fans that your team had nothing to play for when the Eagle players, coaches, and staff, they could very clearly in MetLife Stadium see the scoreboard late in that second quarter or towards the back end of that second quarter, even if it wasn't too late. The Giants outplayed them on Sunday. It's good to build momentum. Try to take it into the next year. And just to show you how far the Eagles have fallen from that 10-1 start, they are the first team in NFL history to win double-digit games and close out their regular season losing to 2 teams with double-digit losses. Of course, the Cardinals in Week 17 and the Football Giants in Week 18. The final takeaway for the Giants as far as on the field, and I'm going to say this loud and clear for everyone to hear. Go get a quarterback if you can at that spot. If there's someone you like, don't not take him because you have Daniel Jones. Quite frankly, and I'm going to say this one more time loud and clear, I would play Tyrod Taylor at quarterback next year. I would make Jones the backup. And then I would move on from Jones when it's feasible to take that dead cap hit. Taylor is more confident. He turns the ball over less. You don't sacrifice a whole lot in terms of mobility. You give up a little bit in size, but 2 or 3 inches. Jones, let's say, is 6'4". Taylor's maybe 6'1", give or take. So you lose a little bit in height. You're not losing in mobility. And I've said Daniel Jones is one of the most mobile quarterbacks. I think that's definitely what he does. And Jones is a nice guy. He says all the right things. I get that. But so far, the best year that he's had in his career, 2022, he only threw 15 touchdowns. He threw 24 in his rookie year. But he only threw 15 touchdowns, and he only averaged 6.4 intended air yards per attempt. I've cited that statistic before when talking about Russell Wilson, and I destroyed Wilson for going from 9.8 in that category to 7.1. Jones is even way worse than that 7.1, and what that means is basically when you drop back to throw the ball, you're not throwing the ball as far in the air because Daboll, you don't trust him. He would never admit this publicly. All right. He doesn't trust Jones's ability to be a passer. He feels like Jones holds the football team back. And the only reason that he felt comfortable starting him was because of his running ability, and no one would doubt that. You'd have to be an absolute fool to doubt Daniel Jones's running ability. He showed that from the first second he stepped on the field there against the Bucs in 2019 when they won. Remember, he won 2 games to open his career against the Bucs and I believe the Commanders, whatever they were called at the time. Then they lost to the Vikings after that, and it was kind of all downhill, down the toilet after that. But I think with Jones, he's shown he's not the franchise quarterback. I think if you have to debate and you have to think about it and you got to watch film and you got to consult with other coaches in the room to see if someone is your franchise quarterback, then they are simply not your franchise quarterback. And you can tell me, okay, they gave him that contract. Listen, what else did you want them to do? This was not a move that I destroyed them for at all. How could I have destroyed it? They had just beaten the Vikings. All right, they lost to a clearly superior Philadelphia Eagle team in which they stood no chance. But there was not a Giant fan in the world saying move on. If there was, then more power to you. I was down on drafting this guy when he walked into the league in 2019. There's recordings of me saying I don't like the way he throws the ball. I didn't think he was it, and he's kind of proven he's okay. He's serviceable. Given the right circumstances, he can get you to the playoffs, but that's the ceiling. And outside of that half against the Cardinals last year, I mean, the just mind-numbing mistakes. That Seahawk Monday night game was pathetic. Then you saw once Taylor got in there, and even DeVito a little bit, the fact that they weren't turning the ball over quite as much. You know, DeVito was taking a bunch of sacks, all right, but he wasn't turning the ball over. And Taylor at least showed you that he was willing, capable, and looked to throw the ball more downfield. I thought they looked like a different team. So it's unfortunate. But again, this deal is as much as people talk about it, oh, it's over $40 million annually. We all know these contracts are not worth anything as far as what they're written. The Giants can move on. I think they have to take $25 million dead cap for next year. It's a lot, but it's not like an unmanageable situation. Again, especially if you go draft a quarterback and that guy's making what, like 9 or 10 million? All right, you're paying for what a really good quarterback costs between the two of them. And I keep Jones around. He hasn't shown that he's going to be, a malcontent in the locker room. I don't think he'll like not playing, but I think he's capable of keeping on the roster. So I think you got to find a quarterback. I think Jones isn't it. I think even limited guys like Taylor and DeVito showed you that A, when you're not turning the ball over all over the place, and B, when you at least are willing and capable to take some more deep shots down the field, it opens up the offense and it makes you a little bit more of a competitive team. And I think Jones has the potential. I think he throws, now he throws a decent deep ball. And of course you love the running, but he's not it. He's not it, Giants fans. I'm sorry. He's not it. So either we go out there and, you play Jones and you win 6 or 7 games, maybe, but he's just not it. And I understand, when you had guys in 2021 in there like Jake Fromm, where they're, what's his name? Joe Judge was running the ball on, quarterback sneak 99 yards away from the opposing end zone. So Jones gives them more of a chance than, scrubs like that. But he's not the guy. I understand he won a playoff game last year. I understand that's less than a year ago. But it's okay to go find a new quarterback. I think that's what you need to do. One thing the Giants definitely need to do is find a new defensive coordinator. Listen, this Don Martindale situation, I mean, him, Don, Wink, whatever you want to call him, and Dable didn't see eye to eye. And I call him Don because that's what Mike Lombardi over there at VEASAN calls him. So I've been calling him Don Martindale ever since. But, these guys didn't see eye to eye. And you could see it right away on that Thanksgiving, the Sunday after Thanksgiving game, where Daboll gives him the game ball, where the Giants beat the Patriots 10-7 when the Pats kicker misses a kick. It was kind of like, here's something. You did a great job on defense coaching the ball game, and we're going to give you the game ball. But you could kind of tell there was some awkwardness in the room. And, Martindale's a good defensive coordinator. I understand that. He's been in the NFL for a while. This guy's been coaching football. I looked it up since the early 80s, assistant coaches in college. And I think he got his start in the NFL with the Raiders probably 20 years ago or so as an assistant. So, he's a football guy. I think people throw that term around. There's no doubt about it. But his main thing, honestly, is he's just going to blitz, 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 blitz. And I know he can design some of these exotic schemes. And I know he's going to get his players motivated. But I think what he did kind of, being disrespectful to the head coach, especially a guy like Dable who comes from that Parcells, Saban, Belichick tree. He has ties to all three of those guys. Maybe not Parcells exactly, but he's got ties to definitely Saban and Belichick, obviously, where you don't disrespect the coach. And I understand Don Martindale was annoyed that he fired those brothers, those assistant defensive coaches. But Dable fired his best friend, the offensive line coach. So it wasn't like he was playing favorites. And I think you just can't have where you're going off on your head coach constantly. And I think this defensive coordinator job, as far as filling it for the Giants, I think that it's a really attractive job. And I think the reason is two players. Dexter Lawrence is an all-pro. He's probably, if not the best interior defensive lineman, he's the top 2 or 3 interior defensive lineman. And you have an edge player in Kayvon Thibodeau who had 11.5 sacks this year. And also you throw in the fact that if the Giants and the Maras and the Tisches, they get annoyed and they move on from Dable after next year, you might be able to put yourself in contention to get that head coaching job if you do a good job. Say if the Giants offense is the problem and it's holding them back, but the defense is consistently keeping teams, say, under 20 points or so, and your defense has done a good job, and you turn Thibodeau into at least being in the discussion for a defensive player in the year, pairing that with the continued development of Dexter Lawrence, who had an all-pro level, maybe his numbers look even better and he gets more sacks. And it's not all about sacks, especially for an interior player and even for an exterior player. If you got a guy where you got to double team him and the other team can't run plays because they got that edge player, in the quarterback's face constantly, he's throwing the ball into the grounds and they can't get screens going off the way because that edge player is just there. And, Thibodeau can play the run a little bit too. Lawrence can obviously play the run. But at any rate, maybe you get that head coaching job. There's definitely a chance that happens. But the one thing that I don't want to see for this Giants team, I don't want to hear about Matt Patricia coming on board. I know he's with the Eagles right now. I don't care how many Super Bowls Dable and him won in New England. I don't care that these guys are both upstate New York guys. I don't care. Do not bring Patricia anywhere near this team. You saw what happened with the Lions. As soon as he was gone, you bring in Dan Campbell. They're a real competitive outfit. Especially after they moved on from Jim Caldwell. Because Caldwell had them in the playoffs in 2016 with Stafford. And you bring in Matt Patricia, and it's just not good. You bring Patricia to the Eagles, all of a sudden they can't stop a fly, despite the fact that they've got guys like Fletcher Cox and they got Jalen Carter, and they got all these big-time players in the secondary with, Bradbury. He's a pretty good player, former Giant, of course. So I don't care. I don't care how many trees they chop down in the forest in upstate New York. I don't care how often they went to Lake George. I don't care how many championships, like I said, that they won with Bill Belichick. I don't care. Don't bring this guy anywhere near the New York Giants. All right, let's take a little bit of a break. We talked a lot about the Giants and the Peacock scenario. I want to get into the coaches, the coaching shuffle, where different guys are going to go. We'll talk about the fit, obviously, for Belichick. Want to talk about Michigan winning the national championship. I want to talk about Saban being out in Alabama. And real quick, I guess, before we end this video, before we end part 1 of the mega pod here on Spotify, for all you Spotify folks, our preseason under-overs, they were pretty good as far as the wins. We go 5-2. Minnesota, over 8.5. We were wrong there. We were wrong with the Chiefs over 11.5. But we give out Seattle under 9.5. We give out the Giants under 7.5. Cowboys over 9.5. That was a cakewalk. Panthers under 7.5, not even a sweat. The one that we did sweat out, the Bears under 7.5. So we go 5-2 on those under-overs. We combine that with our regular season plays. We closed off just pathetically, no doubt about that. But we go 59.3% correct. We go 51-35-4 on the picks against the number. That's a solid percentage at 59.3. We wanted to be near 70. We were there. Guys who win these contests, they're 68, 70%, somewhere in that range. We were there for the first 6 weeks or so. We started off real hot. The first 2 weeks we were at exactly 500, but this is still a really nice number. You get anywhere over that 55, 56%, because of course, 52.4% is where you need to be to break even, assuming it's minus 110 on the games. And assuming that it's minus 110, we're at 14.2% return on the investment. That's not bad at all. Even those Dave Ramsey folks who guarantee you 12% in the market on the long term. That's how he basically does all of his calculations. If you ever seen some of his videos on YouTube, they're great, but 12%, come on, Dave, relax. You're not getting 12%, maybe 10, but to basically guarantee 12%, and that's going to fix all your problems. I digress, but 14.2% on our picks. Pretty good, to quote Larry David. All right, SchlossRant live from the Philadelphia suburbs, part one of the mega pod. We'll see you later on part two.